In this episode of Crazy Reddit Stories, we delve into the emotional and heartfelt journey of a young man who falls in love with the perfect boyfriend, only to face an unexpected storm when he comes out to his deeply traditional parents. What starts as a beautiful love story quickly turns into a battle for acceptance as his family rejects his truth and even tries to sabotage his relationship. Through heartbreak, resilience, and unwavering support from his boyfriend, he learns to stand strong in the face of adversity. Listen as he shares the highs of finding true love, the pain of familial rejection, and the strength it takes to build a life that's true to himself. This powerful and raw story will leave you inspired and rooting for love, no matter the odds. So, about a year ago, I met this incredible guy named Ryder. He's the kind of person who makes everything better just by being there, funny, thoughtful, and the most genuine guy I've ever met. From the moment we started talking, it felt like I'd known him forever. He'd remember the little things like how I'm obsessed with mint chocolate chip ice cream, and one time he surprised me with a tub of it after a stressful day at work. Yeah, he's that guy. We clicked right away, and before I knew it, we were spending most of our free time together. Ryder met my friends, and they adored him. I met his family, and they were so kind and welcoming. It was everything I could have asked for, except for one thing. My parents didn't know about him, or about me being gay. My family is complicated. They're very traditional and deeply religious. Growing up, any topic around LGBTQ+ people was always met with judgment or dismissal. So yeah, I've been putting off telling them, but Ryder, he was too important to keep hidden. I wanted them to know how happy he made me. One weekend, I worked up the courage to go visit them. My hands were shaking the whole drive over. When I finally sat them down, I just ripped the Band-Aid off. I'm gay, and I have a boyfriend. His name is Ryder, and I love him. Silence. My dad stared at me like I'd said something obscene, and my mom started crying. "This isn't who you are," she kept saying. "We didn't raise you this way." I tried to explain that nothing had changed. I was still the same person, but it was like they weren't even listening. I left that day feeling raw and drained, but I told myself at least I'd done it. Then the sabotage started. A week later, they called me and said they were concerned about my choices. But what they really meant was they were going to do everything in their power to tear me and Ryder apart. They tracked down Ryder's phone number and started sending him Bible verses and messages about how he was leading me astray. They even tried to contact his boss, making up lies about him being unreliable at work. When Ryder told me, I was furious and embarrassed. I confronted my parents, yelling at them to stop, but they were convinced they were doing the right thing. They even had the audacity to tell me I'd thank them one day. It didn't work, though. Ryder stood by me through all of it. "We're a team," he told me, "and no one can break that unless we let them." He was my rock through one of the hardest times of my life. Eventually, I had to set some serious boundaries with my parents. It was tough, I won't lie, but Ryder reminded me that my happiness matters too. Now, a year later, Ryder and I are stronger than ever. My parents haven't fully come around, but they've at least stopped meddling. And honestly, I've never been happier. Ryder and I are building a life together. And for the first time, it feels like it's truly ours. That whole experience made me realize something. Sometimes, the family you choose is more important than the family you're born into. Ryder became my everything during that time, but so did my friends. They were my support system when I felt like I was walking through fire. Every time I doubted myself, Ryder or one of my friends would remind me that I wasn't doing anything wrong by loving someone. But I'd be lying if I said it was easy. For a while, I kept hoping my parents would come around. I'd send them texts, updates about my life, and even a picture of Ryder and me at the park one day. My mom would respond, but it was always short, and my dad didn't reply at all. It was heartbreaking, but I had to accept that their idea of love came with conditions, and mine didn't. One of the hardest days was when my parents invited me over for dinner. Ryder encouraged me to go, saying, "Even if it's hard, at least you'll know where you stand." So I went hopeful that maybe they wanted to talk things through. But as soon as I walked in, I realized it wasn't about reconciliation. They had a pastor waiting there, ready to pray the gay away. I sat through an hour of condescending lectures and passive-aggressive prayers. And when I finally stood up and said, "This isn't going to work," my dad just shook his head and muttered, "You'll regret this." That was the last time I visited them in person. I cried all the way home, but Ryder was waiting for me when I got there. He didn't say anything at first. He just wrapped me in a hug and let me fall apart. Then he said, "Look, I can't promise it'll stop hurting, but I can promise I'll be here. Always. And that was it. I realized I couldn't keep trying to earn their approval when they weren't even willing to meet me halfway. Since then, things have been calmer. My parents still haven't accepted Ryder. Or me, really, but they've stopped trying to interfere. I think they realized they couldn't control me anymore. And honestly, it's freeing. Ryder and I moved into a small apartment together a few months ago, and we're making it our own. We have this silly tradition where we cook breakfast for dinner every Sunday, and we've started fostering a rescue dog named Daisy. Life isn't perfect, but it feels right. The funny thing is, as much as my parents tried to tear us apart, they ended up doing the opposite. Ryder and I came out of all this stronger, more committed, and more sure of each other than ever. He's my safe place, my partner, and the love of my life. And even if my parents can't see it, I know I'm lucky to have him. One day, maybe they'll come around. But even if they don't, I've got Ryder, and that's more than enough.